Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Serapio. Bill C-64, the Pharmacare bill, is now passed, receiving royal assent after a final vote in the Senate Thursday evening.
Those in favor of the motion will please say yay. Yay. Those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Nay. I think the yeas have it.
Now, of course, Pharmacare was a key condition of the now collapsed Liberal NDP confidence agreement. But with its passage, Canadians may soon have some diabetes medications and birth control paid for. But the work is not over. Healthcare is still a provincial responsibility, so deals will now have to be negotiated with the provinces and territories before Pharmacare is a reality in Canadian lives.
This is a measure moving forward on Pharmacare negotiations with the provinces that will help Canadians in their health and help them in their pocketbook. But that's something we need to work on right now. That's something all parliamentarians, if they're listening to the constituents, should be working on. But it's certainly something that my government is going to stay focused on.
Well, let's talk about Pharmacare. Yasir Naqvi is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health. Peter Julian, the NDP House Leader and health critic for his party. We did invite the Conservatives to join us today, but they declined. Hello to the two of you.
Hello, Michael.
Good to be with you.
And you. Mr. Naqvi, I'll start with you. You know, your government has already signed an MOU with British Columbia to make this legislation a reality. But how much longer before we see other provinces signing on as well?
Well, first of all, I think it's really important to recognize what a historic moment this is, that for the very first time in Canada, we have a Pharmacare legislation that has become law. And as a result of that, 3.5 million Canadians will have access to diabetic medication, and 9 million women will have access to contraceptives. That's a huge step forward in the journey of our publicly funded healthcare system. But of course, this is one big step that we have taken. Now the important work begins, as you mentioned in your introduction, which is to work with our provinces and territories to reach agreements with them so that these medications could be provided to Canadians in those provinces and territories. And that's the important work that we are embarking on now. We've already have an MOU signed with British Columbia. They are, of course, going through an election right now. So as soon as the election is done, we will resume that work with the government. But we are also starting and engaging in the conversations with other provinces and territories as well, so that Canadians can have access to diabetes and contraceptives as quickly as possible.
Any indication if any province or territory is going to step forward sooner rather than later?
Well, that work is happening, and of course that work is taking place in earnest as well. But I think what we have to be mindful of as well, and this is where a little bit of my disappointment comes with the NDP. This was important work we did together, and by NDP ripping the agreement with the government, and that's their words, not mine, they really jeopardized this important work moving forward, because we need to make sure that government stays in place till next fall in order for us to finalize these agreements to make sure that Canadians can see the benefit of Pharmacare legislation.
Mr. Julian, I'll get you to answer that, because, you know, yes, these deals must be signed, because without these deals, if there is a vote before they're actually reached, that does seem to suggest that Pharmacare is not safe. Does that mean you're willing to support this government de facto until you see some agreements from the provinces coming around?
Well, first off, it's a bit rich given that all the Liberals voted against Pharmacare bill 3.5 years ago in the House of Commons, presented by the NDP. The Liberals and Conservatives voted against. And it's Jagmeet Singh and the NDP that brought the Liberals finally to acknowledge the Pharmacare Act. That you'll recall, Michael, that last spring I had to, as House Leader, basically stop the parliamentary work because the Liberals weren't agreeing to Pharmacare. And the fact that this is now a reality of the law of the land, I think, is vitally important, but it wouldn't have come without the NDP. I mean, the Liberals have always promised and never delivered. The NDP, Jagmeet Singh, and the NDP caucus delivered. Now, the reality is we're talking about a situation that is life-saving. There are hundreds of people that die every year because they can't afford to pay for their diabetes medication and devices. That's according to the CFNU. So the reality is we need to sign these agreements immediately because it's saving lives and making sure that people who have diabetes aren't subject to this burden of finding $1,000 or $1,500 every month just to keep themselves in healthy and alive. And if they can't afford their medication, they end up in the hospital, which means there's a huge cost to our acute care system, which is why the NDP pushed so hard on this. It's a no-brainer. There are a number of provinces that have indicated, as you mentioned, BC, Manitoba, Newfoundland, and Labrador, the number of provinces that are willing to step up immediately. And as the NDP succeeded when we brought in universal health care 60 years ago, it took a couple of years for Conservative provinces to sign on because often they were opposed on ideological grounds. And what happened to those Conservative provinces is that either the government changed its mind or the people of that province changed the government. And that's why Pharmacare will be rolled out. But the Liberal government has to take it seriously and negotiate immediately to put in place these agreements.
But what you're saying there, Peter, that ultimately it did take some time. So does that mean you will give this Liberal government more time to get these deals signed and meanwhile support them in confidence motions? Or is that something you as a party still debating?
No, these are two different issues. No, these are two different issues. We've said we're proceeding vote by vote in terms of the House. We did that during COVID, and as a result of that, Canadians benefited from more supports to families, small businesses, seniors, people with disabilities, students, and of course, workers got their first paid sick leave in Canadian history, all because of the NDP intervening vote by vote. As far as Pharmacare is concerned, those agreements can be signed in a matter of weeks. And we are saying, and Jagmeet Singh said this morning very clearly to the Prime Minister, Liberals have to take this seriously. They will sign the agreements. There will be, I expect, one or two holdouts purely on ideological grounds. But the reality is most Canadians will be benefiting from Pharmacare within a matter of weeks if the Liberals take this seriously and those negotiations are completed with the provinces.
Okay. Now, we did hear Pierre Poilievre this morning, Mr. Naqvi. He says that most people are already covered by private drug plans. Not everyone needs a publicly funded program. So why did this have to be universal rather than income adjusted like dental care? After, right now, your government has a $40 billion deficit on its hands. Why not make it more targeted rather than universal?
Well, these are life-saving medications when it comes to supporting people who live with diabetes or ensuring that 9 million women and gender-diverse people in Canada have access to contraceptives. We think that this should be available to all Canadians. It actually will save them a lot of money as well, which is very important in this moment when there is an affordability crisis. We also know that Pierre Poilievre and his Conservatives don't support public health care. That's why they voted against this legislation as well. And I think that's what at stake also, because if Pierre Poilievre is successful somehow, he will scrap Pharmacare. So I do think that both Liberals and NDP who supported Pharmacare in their respective platforms found common ground. They worked together in the best interest of Canadians. That is a good thing. And now the NDP walking away from it, siding with Pierre Poilievre just to score some political points, it undermines the progress we have made. Of course, we will work with all seriousness, as we have been working up to now, to get this legislation done by working with provinces and territories and get the deals signed. But it still jeopardizes this whole thing, and it's only going to hurt Canadians and no one else. But we will keep working hard to make sure that Canadians get the Pharmacare they deserve.
Okay, Mr. Julian, I have less than a minute. I'll let you answer to that, because there is this worry about the survival of Pharmacare if the Liberals are not elected government next time around.
No, if the NDP is elected government, of course, not only will Pharmacare be put into place, but it'll be broadened to cover other drugs. Dental care will be expanded as well. The reality is the NDP has been the motor behind both of these initiatives. And I'll tell you one thing that I find quite reassuring. In my riding, there are a number of seniors that have always voted Conservative. And I've had those seniors, a number of them, say to me, look, I've seen this new dental care program that the NDP put into place. It's helped me personally. I'm going to be voting NDP for the first time in the next election. And so the antidote to Pierre Poilievre is to have those kinds of clear policies put out that actually benefit people. The Liberals have been beholden to corporate interests, corporate landlords, pharmaceutical companies for far too long. The NDP has forced initiatives that are going to make a difference in people's lives, and I think we're going to see that reflected whenever Canadians go to the polls in their choice. They can choose between Pierre Poilievre, who wants to destroy all that, or Jagmeet Singh, who's shown real leadership over the last 2 parliaments and has actually concretely delivered a track record of results that have benefited people.
Okay. Well, we are out of time. I appreciate both of you joining us on this day. Yasir Naqvi, Peter Julian, thank you for this, and early happy Thanksgiving to both of you.
Same to you, Michael and Peter.
Thanks so much. Happy Thanksgiving.